Oh, it's taking a long time.
Oh no, here it is. Right.
And just remember your audio is now streaming. I'll put the slide up now.
Morning. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Annalisa, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Excitedly nervous?
A little bit, just with the challenges of the day of having, 3 children in the house and
Yeah.
all with different meetings. It's going to be a test for the Wi-Fi to see how it holds up. But
Good luck.
Yeah.
Hey, can you see me?
Who's asking?
Annalisa here. Can you see
sorry.
me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. See you, and I can see Deborah. I know Jenny's there, screen off. Naomi's there, and there are others. We've just come out of a three waters meeting, Annalisa. So
Right.
got that out of the way. This morning, there's no additional business been added to the agenda, and as far as I'm aware, everybody's going to be on the meeting as well.
Great.
We are live streaming at the moment too, by the way.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. How do you get out of the screen and go into Word documents, Naomi?
Morning, everyone. Hey, Anoisa.
Good morning, it's Julian Tan calling.
Morning.
Julian.
All well?
It's a frosty day out here in Darfield this morning. Brilliant sunshine, blue sky. It'll be warmer as once we get to after lunch. So, yep, good day.
Sounds like paradise.
It'll be good to be able to, level 3 is it today? So it hasn't actually felt any different since I've woken up and just done meetings this morning. But, level 3, it's in the background.
Very good.
And it's the first day of spring.
Yes. Does it start today or at the equinox? I'm never quite sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the calendar that says spring, but it's not quite spring yet. I think it's not.
Whereabouts is your home? Where are you, Julian?
In the servants' quarters of Fendleton.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Basement, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Annalisa, I think we're all here.
We're all
Yes,
here.
we are. Rock
Great.
and roll time.
Well, rock and roll time. I've actually got a wee surprise for you, and I've going to outsource our karakia to Tamariki from the Paparoa Street School Kapahaka group. So they're just going to join us. Here are my two
Right.
Tamariki, and they'll do our karakia for us.
Oh,
3, 2, 1.
Takataka te hau ki te uru, wakataka te hau ki te tonga, ki mā kina kina ke uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana, te akahura, te tio, e huka, e hohu, ti hei mo.
Howdy ora. Ah, kapai.
Kia ora, well done.
Very good.
Bye, guys.
brilliant.
Thank you for that. Right, as a same full welcome to the first Audit and Risk Committee of the first day of spring, which is great. Feeling a little spring light out there. I don't think we've got any apologies today.
None that I'm aware of.
None?
Annalisa, no.
So if I could have a mover and a seconder, maybe if someone waves their hands. Murray, thank you. Bob, perfect. Moving on to conflicts of interest.
None have been declared, Annalisa.
Great. So a mover and a second for that. Nicole and Deborah, thank you. And then we have the confirmation of the minutes. Now just bear with me because I'm using one screen to go backwards and forwards between I think we've got two. We've got a special purpose meeting, haven't we? And then the last Audit and Risk Committee. So
we're on page 4. And it was the meeting of the 4th of August that we're looking at.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
happy then, Lisa.
Great, perfect. And a seconder? Nicole, thank you. And then we can move to matters under investigation.
So, Madam Chair, there's only one, and that's to be reported back at the November meeting.
Perfect, great. Mover and a seconder for matters under investigation, please. Oh, Shane, thank you. And who else
Councillor
did I see? Bob, yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, and my apologies for turning up late. I don't know how you turn up late to a Zoom meeting in your own house, but I've managed to do that. Welcome, and thank you very much for the question. My question is on the confirmation of the minutes. Still the question that I've asked on the page 4, 7th of July's agenda on council's responsibility to the council's safety and security, that hasn't been brought forward.
Madam Chair, through you, Shane, can you repeat that? You were breaking up. We only got bits of it.
Apologies, David. My question is a follow-up to a question that I raised on the 7th of July, page 4 agenda, council's responsibility to councillors' safety and security.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can answer that. Has been addressed with our legal advisors, and we've got a training day, Shane, and someone will jump on and tell me late November, early December, and that's actually the key topic of that training day.
Great. Thank you for that. Is that okay with you, Shane?
Yes.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to my verbal report. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge Councillor Murray Lemon's time as chairman. I've only sort of been in this role or as the independent member for a year, but I can see within that year his trustworthy stewardship of leading the ship in the right direction, both in very challenging times, but also in very exciting times for the region, has been greatly appreciated by all. And I'm also greatly appreciative personally that he's still hanging around for a wee while yet, just so that I may lean on him a little bit with that very wise judgment that he has. So thank you very much for that, Murray. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the great mahi of our kai mahi under these kind of not unusual times, I guess, anymore. I guess we're getting a bit used to it, but I know myself with my kind of wider audience, I think everyone's feeling it's a little bit easier this time round, but you know, everyone has unique challenges that they're working under. So the fact that we can actually have this meeting today and that Kaimahi have managed to put together a reporting pack is great, because we know that everyone's got different challenges at home, some, you know, working with kids, or some with partners that have, you know, essential workers, etc., etc. So yeah, just a huge shout out to the Kaimahi that have allowed us to keep going. So and just a reminder to keep looking out for each other, keep checking in and making sure that yeah, everyone's doing okay. And I guess lastly, we've got a fairly light agenda today, probably working through the pack. The most important thing I think is probably around the annual report and the process that we need to work through. We've obviously got some through Calvin's paper, we've got some things to talk about with regards to the delay and yeah, and timeframes being shifted. So we'll come to that when we get to further in the pack. But that's all from me, unless there's any questions or comments. Yes, Murray.
Yeah, it's just a acknowledgement of your kind words, and Lisa, thank you very much. And under different circumstances, I would have been able to do a better handover to you. I feel a wee bit guilty. in the circumstances, it would have been nice to have sat in that first agenda setting and done a more formal handover, but circumstances don't allow. Really happy to have you lean on my shoulder if you need to, but just make sure it's the right one at present. The left one's just had a jab yesterday. It's a bit tender. So, yeah. So, look, really pleased to see the transition to you. And I know you'll bring the committee forward in a direction that will reflect your skills and your abilities. As you say, mine were in a different area. Yours will bring the committee in a focus that I think is well needed, and you'll show your worth. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Mary. Sam.
Yeah, just I support those words of Murray, really. And Lisa, it's great to have you on board as our chairperson, and having your expertise as an independent member over the last 12 months has been very worthwhile, and look forward to those insights continuing in the leadership position you now have within this group. And it'll also be a conversation for us, not today, but as time ticks on around bringing in a second independent member to this group. So, yep, just well done on being the chair. Murray, thank you for the job you've done up to this point, and we look forward to continuing the good work of this committee. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sam. Nicole, did I see your hand go up? No. All right, if nothing else, can I please have a mover and a seconder for my report, please? Verbal report. Thanks, Sam. And Deborah, thank you. I think that leads us on to the manager's report. David.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And look, I want to, it's on the theme, I also, from a management and staff perspective, would like to acknowledge the contribution that Murray has made to Audit and Risk. Murray, it was an absolute pleasure working with you over the period of time of your chairmanship. The committee achieved a lot and moved in a very, very strong direction towards where we're heading at the moment. So I really want to thank you for your work and your support of staff during that process. And Annalisa, welcome. I look forward to working with you, as do staff, as and the new independent chair of Audit and Risk, and the strength that you're going to bring in the direction that we will continue to sail with the committee. Item 2 is for information of the committee, advice of the Orion dividend, which was paid on the 27th of August. Item 3 is really the key one. Madam Chair, you're right, the agenda is a wee bit light today in 2 areas. Normally it would be dominated by annual report related matters, and we'll address those in a paper further into the agenda today. The other one is, as we went into lockdown, we were starting our work in earnest on the risk framework matters, particularly identifying those crucial areas, work program for next year, or for the current financial year, which goes into next year, and also some of the deep dive things. And I'm going to pass to Kelvin just to talk about, firstly, the internal audit program that's been developed, and secondly, some of the risk framework focus areas at the moment. Kelvin.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So the risk, we'll start with the risk framework and register, given that's the first item there. The intention had been to have this at this meeting. Unfortunately, due to everything that's going on and other matters with Three Waters, we got a little bit tight on time to have a thorough executive risk workshop where we take a deep dive into our risks and really look at them critically to make sure that we've got the right controls and the right mitigations in place, and also bring forward some other things which have been raised at various council meetings and other things along the way, which we think should be brought forward into the risk register. So that will return in due course, pending ability for the executive to get together. It's a little bit challenging to do that across a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. I'd sooner be in person so we can whiteboard some of these things. Moving on to internal audit program, this was discussed last meeting when we were discussing the terms of reference, just to make sure that we do have a formal internal audit program. This is best practice. It is what you'd expect to do, but just to be mindful, it will come at a cost, and a review will, each review will cost an amount of money. There is some budget sitting in the area to do this. where my initial thoughts are, and really interested in getting the committee's views on this, is three matters which I believe are where we hold some risk, and that's the top one being cybersecurity, which is a substantial risk for all organisations currently. And I just heard some reports recently with going into lockdown, it suddenly becomes a greater risk also. So making sure that we focus upon that. We've recently employed a new CIO who was, I will get in front of this committee at some point to meet. She joined a week prior to going to lockdown and had anticipated taking a fairly easy, let's learn what's going on, but she has been thrown well and truly in the deep end and has been doing a great job at moving certain things forward. One of the first tasks that I've given her is to commission a report on cybersecurity, and that will form part of this internal audit. I've been a bit presumptuous in doing that, but I'm pretty sure that as a committee you'll agree that that's a top risk. The next two are really looking at making sure we're getting value for what we're doing and minimising risk against resource being pushed into the wrong direction, doing the wrong things, and that's around our project management methodology. We still do have a reasonably large portfolio of projects moving forward, despite in the stages of closing out larger builds, being the Aquatic Centre and Tiara Tier, having recently finished Selwyn Sports. And the third area, which covers both risk in a probity sense, but also opportunity to grow effectiveness and value for our ratepayers, is around procurement practices and looking to make sure that we are leveraging the best we can for the ratepayer. So I'll leave that there. That's thoughts on internal audit program. Not a lot of audits in it, but by the time we get that up and running effectively, moving into the remainder of this financial year, I think there are three good places to start, but I'll take your guidance.
Great, thanks, Calvin. I think the first question was Shane.
Kia ora, morena tātou. Sorry for my breaking up before. My headphones were still plugged into my phone, so you couldn't hear me properly. The first question, and I'm happy to move the report, is the dividend from Orion. Where was that allocated to and for what purpose?
Our dividends all go into a general rate account, Shane. It's council process, yeah.
Yes, thank you. And secondly, regarding internal audit, Calvin, you've mentioned that it is open to add perhaps areas for audit there. And I just wonder, and I think it's been spoken about before, organisational efficiencies and just getting a broad, I guess, scope on the organisation itself running as efficiently as it can. And just secondly, the CIO, what role is that and the purpose of that, please? What does CIO stand for?
So yeah, I'll answer that one quickly now, Shane. It's Chief Information Officer, so head of IT.
Great. Was that all from you, Shane?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with those answers?
Yes. Yep.
Great. Deborah,
to unmute myself. I've got a query, and I guess it's around our banking. Given previously that organisations were able to deal in cheques, and it requires often 2 signatories, with regards to the computerising of banking, I'm aware of how it works for not-for-profit, and there is some real challenges for not-for-profit with regard to signatories and how those electronic signatories are actually collected. Do we have the same situation within our organisation going forward with regards to not being able to directly deal in cheques, shall we say?
To answer that, Deborah, since I've been here, and I'd say for quite some time, we haven't issued a check out of the place. Electronic banking works exactly the same as a dual signatory, where it will require two people to authorize a payment. And in our case, we'll have a third person, an independent person of the two approvers, setting the payment up. So it becomes a three-step process where one staff member will establish the payment online, and then two individuals will approve the payment, similarly to a dual signing of a check.
Just with regards to that, given that there has been the ability for phone hacking, where people are actually, maybe one is working on a computer system and the other may be working on a phone system, do we have any gaps in the checks and balances of how we're managing it?
No. This is standard process which has been around for numerous years in banking industry. That it's the everyone will hold their own password for that. There's also an authorizer will hold a token which will have a random number generated, which will require you to enter that number into the system, which has a second authorization, second dual authority type piece.
And I think the key message is that we haven't issued a check for well over 12 months, probably way longer than that. And secondly, our processes are subject to annual audit from Julian and his colleagues.
Right, thank you. You okay with that, Deborah? Thumbs up. I think we move on to you, Murray. You got a question?
Yeah, it's really just to support the direction that Kelvin's going, asking for feedback. So yeah, absolutely. Cyber is something that I know I've raised in the past, and it's something we need to keep a lens on. Kelvin, as you've commented on in previous meetings, the whole project management and procurement process is an ongoing discussion that we've been having for some period of time. So we reviewed the procurement process some time ago, probably due for a review on a really regular basis. I'm sure it will be. So definitely support that. Shane's made commentary around value for money and making sure that we've got efficiencies in the system too. And I assume that would be part of that process. So fully support that. Thank you. And just to add to that, we're currently out in the market advertising for that procurement and delivery position, which backs into those last two bullet points as well. If I can carry on with the report, item number 4 was the OAG paper. This was interesting. We were one of 4 subject councils. I've attached the OAG paper to the agenda. Key areas around having robust policies, and the area of concern is where there's multiple conflict registers, which is something that we are addressing at the moment. Over the page, building the right culture, and then understanding how well conflicts are managed. So all in all, we're very comfortable with the feedback that we got through that. Take it to page 25 of the report, which is the Health and Safety Monthly Report, and I'll just speak to some of the key items on there. The first one is to let you know that the health, safety and wellbeing strategy is progressing through the organisation, and you'll see third bullet point there where we've got a bow tie exercise on the 19th of October involving the management team. OPSEC, so this is our facilities, a number of activities that we're undertaking there following an independent review in the past 12 months, and then discussions with staff. Some activities which have largely been completed. Health and safety training continues. 22 in-reach devices have now been issued out to staff who are working in the field, and this is staff who are in remote locations, possibly dangerous locations, or working outside of work hours, so that we know where they are and how well they're protected. Over the page, our drug and alcohol policy, most of the activities in terms of the launch of that have been completed. And the COVID-19, so PPE stocks, we're well off for all of those items, particularly around masks and gloves, but also sanitizer itself.
And next page, some key events. Daffodil Day, very happy to report that staff raised at last count $670 with a morning tea for Daffodil Day last week, and that was a really good family sharing exercise. Importantly, our involvement in Mental Health Awareness Week on the 27th of September, and there's the usual Movember response, and some learning events, Madam Chair, that were finished off the report, highlighting and also identifying our response. So staff are happy to answer aspects or matters on any aspect of that report.
Thanks, David. Murray, I think you had a question.
Yeah, sorry, not meaning to dominate here, but David, just the OAG report, it's obviously 4 councils there, and it's talked about, you know, some people meeting certain expectations and some others, but it's not specific about which council is which. And I just think possibly we need to understand where the holes are. You know, it's been fairly, we say the report's reasonably non-specific about who is meeting and not meeting those requirements. So it would be good to get a breakdown. You know, we can read between the lines here and probably work out which ones do apply to us. But it would be good to get an understanding of that, and perhaps, and at least I'd maybe have that as a discussion point going forward. And I'll sort of note there that, you know, there were 2 of the 4 councils who did not have agree that they did not have a role in making decisions about conflicts of interest, but that they were also unclear whether they should be involved. So that may or may not be us. I don't imagine it is us. I think we are reasonably clear about that. But there are a number of other examples there where it would be useful, I think, to understand where the holes are in our system coming back. So more in depth look at that.
Yeah, happy to do that. We have got a council-specific response, Murray, which we have attended to. Very few gaps, as you'd appreciate, across our horizon, but happy to address those in a subsequent report.
Thanks, David. The other thing too was just a commentary I made in the previous audit and risk meeting around the electrical incident we had, and I felt that should have been automatically reported to the electricity board. I just wonder if there's been a follow up to that. If we could get Dan to perhaps just give us a report back at some time.
Yeah, well, Kelvin can speak to that actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Murray, that has occurred, so it's been reported through to the appropriate authorities, and the building company is also taking action as well to deal with that. So that's all been reported.
No, that's good. Thanks, Kelvin, because it's something that shouldn't occur. Obviously, there was obviously something not quite right in the processes there. So it's good to follow that through the appropriate channels. Thank you.
Thanks, Murray. Deborah.
Right. Page 26 on the OSPEC, you're actually talking about Taitapu cameras are awaiting connection with hardware. Are they security cameras?
Douglas, can you respond to that?
Yes, they are. They're just to improve our management of that building under a number of scenarios, ranging from day-to-day business to if there's an issue in the building that we need to be aware of. It's a part of a rollout process through certainly most of our strategic buildings, just to give us better coverage of activities on the ground.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because the Springston Township Reserve and Hall Committee, through Billy Charlton, have been requesting the need for a policy around security cameras. And it's still on one of their agenda items with regards to has council developed a policy around this so it's not misused, and how wide will the rollout actually be with regards to a lot of our facilities like halls and reserves that we will end up managing.
We're currently in the final part of reviewing our CCTV camera policy as it relates to our main strategic buildings. Whether that is rolled out to the building you're referring to will just depend on how we see it in terms of strategic importance, because there is a cost of each site that we just need to manage between the risk of that site. Secondly, we then need to work through a process of whether we have CCTV cameras within public spaces. That's a report that would come back to yourselves for consideration, because that is a different level of consideration that needs to be done. And thirdly, there's also our own policy on covert camera operations. And that's obviously predominantly around compliance issues, which we have in place as well. We're just also working through, we're a bit mindful, we're a wee bit short of signage in some areas, advising people of their rights, which you have to do under the Privacy Act, for particularly the type of activity we're talking at, like Rhodes Park is our example here.
Okay.
So just with regards to the development of that policy, perhaps because the Springston Township Reserve Hall Committee have been trying to deal with Billy Charlton's area, perhaps some liaison work may need to go on, and then we can, once it's sorted out, then we can let the community committees know what the outcome is.
Happy to do that. If you could email me the contacts of the individuals I need to talk to, I can have that initial discussion.
Thanks, Douglas.
Right, thank you. Shane, I think you had a question.
Madam Chair, no, I don't. It's been asked already. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Nicole?
Thanks for that. I second Murray about the conflicts of interest. I've highlighted a number of sections in that report, and I'd be interested to hear how we actually went ourselves, because this is quite important, and for the public out there, that the conflicts of interest are quite transparent. I mean, it's a number of times that comments are made on Facebook, and it's actually quite demoralizing to see it. So we need to make sure that we are quite open on our conflicts of interest, and I think we are, but it's good to actually
Madam Chair, it appears Nicole's frozen up, but acknowledge the question. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, right. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. No.
No.
Try stopping your video,
Yeah.
Nicole, if you can just audio it.
Oh,
No, still gone, Nicole.
no. I might jump in here. There were no other questions to the manager's report. So my
one there for Bob, Madam Chair.
Oh, Bob. Oh, sorry, Bob.
Microphone, Bob. Microphone.
And just a question of Douglas, in Darfield and around our areas, the people or community committees are actually putting up surveillance cameras and that. Is there anything that council should be involved with these and know where they are, or is there any policy on that type of thing?
Well, such surveillance cameras aren't under the auspice of the council's instruction. So we would be interested, probably like the police, in knowing who is taking responsibilities for those cameras, because there are a variety of Privacy Act considerations. One has to make sure that you're working through carefully. So, as I said, at this time, any policy we do on cameras within those public spaces, of the firmly of a view that must come back in front of the council for consideration for those wider public issues. I mean, we are entitled, along with the police, to put in cameras in spots where we believe there are activities such as vandalism. The Coast Ford example recently is one where we will review the need for that. But if you do have areas where you think there is some conflict, again, drop me a note on those. I am aware of some interest in the Darfield area from about 12 months ago, which I thought had actually gone away. So just drop me a note and we will follow those up. They're not necessarily our issue to follow up, but we can certainly give groups some advice to whether what they're doing is appropriate.
Great. Thanks, Bob. I No other questions. I think we've lost Nicole, but hopefully she'll come back. So my view of the manager's report is fairly consistent to everything that's already been discussed. I guess working through the report, great news, re the internal audit program. And I said once we get closer to that, it will be good to link I guess risk to those areas that you've identified. They seem sensible to me from an understanding our world of Selwyn, and obviously the risk kind of profile that we're dealing with at the moment. But it would be good to link that to our kind of strategic risk areas. I'd also be keen to see, and it doesn't have to happen in the first, I guess, tranche of internal audits. It might be the second tranche, and also obviously once our health and safety team have been more embedded, but at some stage I'd like to see some independent assurance around health and safety, I guess, from our framework and policy and strategy, and just have that kind of independent view that we you know, are meeting good practice, which I think we are. So but it'd be good to get that independent view. I won't talk about conflicts of interest because I think that was well discussed, but completely agree with other views, is that the report was kind of very generic. So it would be good to capture that as an action to see what was actually specific to Selwyn, us, and management's action against any of those activities or improvements that we need to make. Health and safety report was great. That just keeps getting better and better each month. I didn't really sort of have any comments apart from, as I say, the quality of that report just improving month on month. So that was great. And also congratulations on the work being done around the drug and alcohol policy. Seems like a very comprehensive and methodical approach, which is great. So that was all from me. If there were no other questions on that report, then can I please have a mover and a seconder? Bob, thank you. And Deborah. Great. That moves us on to the Audit and Risk Committee terms of reference.
Okay, a fairly small paper here, really reflecting the comments from last Audit and Risk Committee meeting, where we've included an internal audit program, which was the recommendation of the committee, into the terms of reference. The markups are included in the appended terms of reference. Also, just changes of positions within the committee have also been reflected in the new terms of reference.
Yeah, I didn't see those minor changes to the terms of reference are consistent to what we've just talked about, read the terms of reference. So if there are no questions, I think we can just, Shane.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I pushed the clap button instead of the raise your hand button. So it's a hand up anyway. But my question is just around, I guess it's more information really, and around the discussion that we've had within our committee on the terms of reference. One question is just what is the process of requesting reports? The point there above point 2, to allow it to undertake those responsibilities, subcommittees can request information. I'm just asking the question of how, what is the process? And I'm guessing it's just asked directly, but clarification for that. Also, we've, as a committee, had the discussion around membership selection at the start of each term, and just, I guess, finding suitability and the process that goes around that at the beginning of the term, being a new member, and the opportunity, I guess, to have these discussions during the next term, with the introduction of a new audit and risk subcommittee around the term. We've had that discussion around whether there needs to be an extension of term, and we'll continue to discuss that, and the opportunity to upskill to make sound decisions is what I've learned over the period of time that I've been a part of this committee. So now that we've elected a chair, an independent chair for the term of the next 4 years, the opportunity for elected members to take that, to be a part of that position, to develop and to learn. I think we've made the sound decision to support elected members with training to upskill themselves so that they could continue to make good sound decisions for the public. Thank you.
Just responding to your first question, Shane, through you, Madam Chair, reports for all committees are requested either A, through the chair, or B, through the chief executive. And in terms of reference, that is reviewed on an annual basis. And that was what we did last month. So this is the feedback from that one.
Thank you. Murray, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's really just partially a response, but also I'll move the report while I've got the floor. So happy to move that report. It is a reflection, and Lisa, as we know, of the direction that we took over the past couple of meetings and our workshops as well. Do think, though, having said that, that there's an opportunity at the next review in a year's time to look at those terms, as Shane said, to see the potential skill set. We won't know till post-election what skill set we have around the table, obviously, but we will know who's wanting to stand again, and that may give us some indication as to who is possibly going to be a member of this committee. So as with everything, we've got a review in a year's time, and it might be appropriate then to have that more in-depth discussion around that. So as I say, happy to move the report.
Great, thanks, Murray. Have someone else second the report, please, and the terms of reference.
Happy to do that, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks, Shane. Right, it moves us on to the annual report and audit update. Is that Kelvin, Julian? Not sure who's presenting.
First off, I'd like to welcome Julian Tan to the meeting from Audit New Zealand, and he'll speak to a couple of these points, which we'll run through shortly. But we'll start off with the annual report update. We would have typically had a draft set of financial statements and annual reports from at this meeting. Given the movement in time and in COVID and bits and pieces, I've given my team a little bit more leeway to get things completed, and thought it would be more wise at the next meeting to bring a draft set of financials. On the key matters, probably the one that creates the most discussion and has the most subjective items is around valuation. At this time, for this set of financials, the water infrastructure assets were revalued in this financial year, which was 1 July 2020, they were revalued, and investment properties are being revalued also. An indication of where the Three Waters valuation is going, it looks around to be 78 million uplift, and our investment properties a smaller 1 to 2 million increase. The one property which is outstanding is the new health hub, which is just being valued, but you would anticipate it shouldn't be too far away from book value. In terms of impairments, no material impairments other than damage that occurred during the recent flooding, and we suspect that'll be around about $500,000 of flood impairments. And there are no material changes to accounting standards or policies that the committee will need to consider. But as I said, we'll bring back a draft annual report at the next meeting. Is there any questions on the annual report process before I move to audit update? Shane?
Just one question for me, Calvin. The frequency, thank you, Madam Chair. Clarification of frequency of Treasurer's report.
The Treasury report comes through on a quarterly basis, Shane. It'll be the end of the September quarter.
Thank you. Are we now questioning, are you moving on to the audit update now, are you?
I'll intro that in a second.
Thank you.
Deborah? You're on mute.
Right. Just with regards to page 36, the annual report update, when we're talking about material impairment and it's likely to be around $500,000, is that including our insurance claims?
We would receive, if there's insurance claims on those, we'd be receiving those as revenues, but the asset itself is impaired. So I haven't included any insurance in that discussion there yet, but there will be insurance matters coming through. Okay, moving forward to audit update. Look, just to overview this, we'll start with timeline and then we'll move on to fees. There is a significant impact on resources within the audit sector, and we've discussed this a couple of times at this meeting, and these are twofold. There is an underlying shortage of auditors across the board in New Zealand before the impacts of COVID, and subsequent impacts of COVID have made that significantly larger. So typically there'll be audit resource brought in from overseas. With the borders effectively closed and MIQ space is very limited, it's been difficult to get that through. The Chartered of Accountants Australia and New Zealand sought from the government an exemption, a border exemption on bringing forward 300 auditors. That exemption request was declined, and part of that, I think, was the fact that there was just no MIQ spaces. Parliament have extended deadlines for public entities to present their financial statements, and that exemption for us as a council is moved out to 31 December, but our CCO is 30 November, so a little bit of a difference there on that. We're looking at an audit delay due to resourcing, which Julian will cover off shortly, but the intention is starting around the beginning of November. But again, with COVID where we are now, there's probably further pressure going on that. And that, of course, will put pressure on a few things for us. And one being able to sign off the financial statements and annual report prior to the council going into recess, which is in mid-December. It may require to meet those deadlines reconvening or audit moving faster or something along those lines. We have a trust deed issue where our trust deed requires us to have audited trust deed statements which requires audited financial statements 4 months after balance date, and so we're running into pressure on that. So there'll need to be discussions with the trustee. The timing of the audit will overlap with the timing of any annual plan preparation. And we'll have Fitch, who would normally come in January, February, and to do an interim review, may put pressure on them if they don't have financial statements in the market. The second point, and I'll allow Julian to come in and discuss these, but I just want to front end both of them so we can get into those discussions together, is audit fees. They are increasing this year. I've got Julian would like to discuss the explanation of why the fee is moving and the rationale behind that. I just want to remind the committee that you should ask questions of Julian where you want clarity and various things on that, but this is not the time and place for us to be negotiating any fees. We should be doing that in a public excluded area, but this is more to give a bit of context around the fee movement. I'll hand across to Julian to have a discussion and sort of outline the position of Audit New Zealand.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. And first and foremost, my thanks to Murray, the previous chair of the audit committee. We have had a good relationship, working relationship. And may I add my congratulations to Annalisa for taking on the independent chair's role. That to me signifies the council's placement of great importance to the role of the independent chair. So those are my opening remarks. I've been listening intently so far on the proceedings of this meeting. I just want to contribute a few comments. First and foremost, on the internal audit program, cybersecurity is a topic that I've been hearing at recent board meetings. That's taken great prominence since the Waikato DHB problem that has emerged as a big issue for everyone to deal with. So I think that's the right thing to do, to make sure that any threats to council are dealt with and dealt with properly. At some point, I will contact Kelvin to get a better idea as to what the internal audit program entails, how that matches up with council's assessed risks, and who is doing the work for council. There's some comments about conflicts of interest. Yes, I'm fully aware of the OAG letter that has gone out to council. I'm very pleased that Selwyn District Council has volunteered to be one of those in that group to be reviewed. There's a lot of literature that the office has prepared, and I'm happy to send the links to Kelvin for dissemination to councillors who are interested in knowing what a well-managed conflict of interest policy in practice and so on looks like. And I'll do that if there's interest. I think, was it you, Shane, who mentioned about keeping up to date with audit committee functioning and so on, and getting knowledge on how those committees should work. Likewise, the office has prepared voluminous amounts of guidance on public sector audit committees, and I'm happy to send them through to Kelvin for dissemination. And on the two things that Kelvin wanted me to talk about, first and foremost about the audit timetable. We just want to acknowledge that that it has been extremely difficult for us to work across the country, given the limitations placed on us regarding our limited ability to deal with the surge capacity around 30th of June balance dates. So I won't deal too much on that, other than to say that the resource that we booked for Selwyn is the best that I could get. The resourcing decisions are made centrally. We pleaded, but we were told that that's the best scenario we have been given. So I'm extremely reluctant to seek a change in the timetable, rather than risk. As soon as I say I want to change, I will have to give up the confirmed timetable for our people to work on council's audit. Is that enough for the moment, Kevin, on the timetable?
I think maybe if there's any questions on timetable, we take those now before moving to fees.
Through you, Madam Chair, I wonder if I can just make a comment. Whilst it is disappointing that we've had to adjust the time frame, Julie and I understand that with my financial and accounting background as to what the problem is. I think the message to councillors would be, we will need to show some flexibility in terms of our meeting dates towards the end of the year. The last official council meeting is scheduled for the 8th of December, and then we don't return until, I think it's 30th, 31st of January or first week of February. So we're mindful of the need to have to sign off on our annual report under current legislation before the 31st of December. So we may need some agility around scheduling a special or extraordinary meeting in the latter part of December, but obviously before Friday the 24th, to adopt the annual report. So we will work through that with Julian and his staff further down the track.
David, that will require 2 special meetings. It'll be a special meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee along with a full council meeting.
Yes, it will.
I think Shane, first question.
No, I've got a question later.
Ah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, where are my hands gone? Sorry if I haven't got this in the right order. Murray, so your hand's raised.
Might have been Sam if he wants to go first.
Either way, thanks for the report. I guess just it's pretty disappointing we were at with timeframes, which is obvious, and but I don't want to not say it just because it's obvious. Or these are not the expectations that we have as a professional organisation to, and for the expectations both from those above us and our community below us around our reporting and transparency, which is very key for us and has been mentioned earlier in the meeting as well. I agree, though, that it's not worth risking times that, while not what we would want to see, risk them being pushed out into 2022 by throwing them up in the air. So if we've got some confirmed times and staff are comfortable working to those, then let's keep what we've got. I guess I've got a concern about what this means for next year, because if we're already 4 or 5 months behind, this year, then next year rolls around, how are you going to catch up that third of a year? Because I don't see borders being open. So I'd be interested to know the contingency planning underway, because it'll mean more than 12 months before we would see you again, Julian. If there's going to end up being that timetable taken, it'll be into 23 before we're doing the 2021 stuff. So just interested in knowing how you see that timetable over the next 12, 18 months playing out. And as far as the end of year meetings go, we'll obviously need to be flexible, and we'll have extra meetings where they're needed to ensure that we can do the best we can. And I guess the easy part now is that Zoom meetings are also really easy to pull together and fit within legislative decision making, that we can do it this way. So if we can meet in person, great, but we can also pull together a sign-off meeting online. But I'm interested in the follow-on effects from this, Julian, and how you see the timeframes going forward, because I wouldn't want to see the same thing happening next year. But actually, if we look forward to next year, it's probably getting worse again, not better.
Thanks, Sam. I can only do what I can, and Parliament has been wise enough to extend the statutory reporting deadlines, not just for 2021, but also into 2022. So Parliament has recognized that there is still a risk that the borders won't be open at a time that they wish they could. So whether we will be able to do any better next year in terms of timing, I can't really say at this stage. The office as a whole, that includes Audit New Zealand and the OAJ, are doing or exploring other means of getting audits completed. There is an enormous tension between working efficiently, working hard as we always do, and audit quality. So there is that enormous tension with preserving and maintaining audit quality, which cannot be compromised, as you could imagine. So the office is working on a range of options, and I believe that includes also getting help from our counterparts in Australia, and that's the Australian National Audit Office. There is a general rule that we cannot send laptops across countries, but they might make an exception for them. So I hope that there will be some available resource through that means and through other means. The office, through the Auditor General's office, has also contacted Treasury. And as you know, within the public sector, there are hundreds of internal auditors who might have started their careers in external auditing. So through the Treasury, a message has been sent out to see if there are internal auditors currently working in the public sector who might be interested to spend a secondment period with us. So there are other ways we are looking at it, but ultimately having the resource to do the work is the most important thing, and while maintaining quality.
Cool, thank you. And I'd just say that bigger organisations taking staff from internally audited positions only weakens the whole system, because those people then can't be replaced, and we're facing that as a council, whether that's in IT, water services, building consent officers. When government makes a call and can pay a bit more, all that does is leave. It doesn't actually strengthen the system. It plugs a hole by pulling the cork out of somewhere else.
Well, you're quite right. You're quite right, Sam. It's a zero-sum game. So the number of people available and qualified to do the work is limited. So if you lose one person in one organization for the benefit of the other, the entire system is still the same. No change. Which then, yeah. So,
sorry, Julian, second question I had was around being able to think about audits and audit priorities slightly differently. Our audit report tends to come back reasonably slimline, not too many comments, and we tend to be in a reasonable place. Some councils or other organisations struggle to get things in even on time, let alone think about how the audit process may work, and there's some that are still trying to figure out their LTPs at the moment. Is there a way of thinking about how you go about your prioritisation slightly differently? And in the farming and rural space, you know, there's A, Bs and Cs, and if you're an A in an A space, then you get to, you know, have a slightly different process, or a biannual process rather than an annual process. And if you're a B or a C, it looks different again. Have there been any other ways that Audit New Zealand has looked at trying to manage your own resource internally by thinking about how you might treat councils or organisations similar to ours? And if not, I'd be interested in thinking about how we might support you or others in the sector to be able to lift that type of conversation, because it would be beneficial for all of us.
Sam, that's a damn good question. I mean, I can speak on behalf of the Auditor General in that we are not, being the auditor, statutory auditor, we are not in a position to encourage any public entity to fail to meet their statutory reporting deadlines. That's the first principle we work on. Now, for practical purposes, if there are any reporting entities, and that includes the councils that you have, you know of, that definitely could not meet the deadline, we will be in discussions with them about moving their work out. And they may well have to wait, just like the Halley's Comet, come back 76 years later. Who knows? So yes, we do look at those so-called performing entities and those that are not. But the call for us isn't for them to miss their deadline. We do give them the opportunity to do what they can, and then face up to the facts that they can't deliver.
Murray, I think you had a question.
Yeah, it is. Just firstly, Julian, thanks for your commentary around my chairmanship. I appreciate that and the relationship that we've had, and continue that going forward with the new chair, obviously. Just the comments have largely been made, and Lisa, but just the other thing that we've got coming up in December is a decision on Three Waters. So this is going to put added pressure on us there as well. So just mindful of that. As other commentators have said, it's disappointing, but it just is what it is. We'd love to be different, but I guess reluctantly we have to accept what we have to accept.
Thanks, Murray. Deborah?
Thanks, Sam, for asking some of my questions. But one question I've got to ask is around the government reforms of local government. Would you see, Julian, that it would be more efficient to have less councils with regards to you meeting your audit deadline dates with regards to statutory process? Or does it have no effect?
Deborah, I really cannot comment on those matters. They are matters of government policy. So I'm reluctant to say anything. I got my own personal views, but I can't share them. Sorry.
Just to wrap.
I don't think there's any.
You got a comment, Barry and Lisa? I was just going to wrap.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, if that's all right, Calvin, or did you want to
No, sorry.
add more?
No, carry on, and then I'll wrap that part of it.
Okay. Yeah, quick from me. Look, I share your pain, Julian. I've got colleagues that are in your role, obviously in the not the public sector, but you know the audit industry is in crisis at the moment from a resourcing perspective. I guess my only concern is that you know, we've talked a lot about I guess the work the office is doing around resourcing and you know trying to get staff from here and borders. But the industry's in crisis, not just because of borders, because there's less people going into audit, there's less graduates coming into audit and people staying in audit and wanting to do audit. So I guess my concern is that, you know, once the border opens, when it opens, it's not necessarily going to be a quick fix. And it would be good for you to kind of push our message up to, and this is kind of adding on to Sam's comments around, can you change your methodology? You know, so it's not about, yes, we can find more people, or adding a little bit to Sam's comments around the prioritization, but can you change your methodology, I guess, to work, you know, work smarter, not harder. I know you've got to do what you need to do to be able to give audit clearance, but can the office start looking at the way it does audit, you know, and can it take a more risk-based approach so that you can condense timelines? Because, you know, if you had a more pragmatic approach to this, I know it's a bit of an oxymoron with audit and pragmatism, but, you know, if we did have that kind of approach, or we could start shifting to that, then, you know, when we do meet crisis as we are in now, then, you know, that risk-based approach would be highly beneficial. So I know it's not something you can solve now, but, you know, it would be a good message to take back to the office that rather than this push on, you know, we can get resources from here, but, you know, is the office through time, can it start looking at the way it does audit? So that was all for me.
Sure. May I say some words in response, Madam Chair? The office has used a risk-based approach for as long as I've been in the office, and there are continuous improvement programs on making audit more efficient. So we are up with the big firms in terms of using data analytics, using computer audit techniques, etc., etc. So we are looking at better ways of doing things in line with leading edge audit practice. So the risk-based approach we talk about are reflected in the audit plan we sent to you. So we talk about the big matters that could have a potential impact, material impact on your financial statements. The matters that Kevin mentioned earlier, matters around valuation, matters around impairment, those kind of things. So we use a risk-based approach, and I said, as long as I've been in this office, that has been that approach that we use. Now, I align with that enormous pressures that we got to respond to QA findings from the FMA, from NCICA, and also from the OAG's Audit Quality Inspection Unit. There are always things that they feel could be done and more in response to meeting auditing standards. It's quite frightening. If you read some of the reports that are public, the FMA ones are public, there are still many areas that auditors are not doing their job properly. And we're trying to narrow the gap. We are not in the bad category, I got to tell you that. We are in the good category. But there are areas that are getting tougher and tougher. These are the areas, especially around making estimates and making big judgment calls. Those are the areas that are being looked at by the QA inspectors all the time.
Okay, thanks, Julian. There's no other questions. Maybe hand it back to you, Kelvin. Oh,
Yeah.
Shane, did your hand just pop up?
No, I'll leave it to Kelvin. I'll just have a question around the fees once Kelvin wraps that up.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the timetable, I think the key thing for us is we've got a willingness to pull together some out of cycle meetings to ensure that we get the sign off. I still need to have a chat with the trustee around we could be in breach of our trust deed, so I need to make sure that discussion occurs. But probably the request of you, Julian, is a firm end date for us. With lead-in, it's difficult for us to schedule meetings at a short time, so it would be great to have this will be the end date of the audit, and we can schedule meetings to allow that to occur.
Yep, sure, Kevin. We can talk about this offline. And just on the trust deed, the debenture trust deed, the trust deed does require the reporting certificate to be completed within 4 months of balance date. The office is aware of this, and I believe that the office is making an approach to the trustee on behalf of the sector.
Okay, we'll move to fees. So, Julian, do you want to just provide an explanation of the pressures on fees for us?
Thanks, Kevin. I just want to refer to the Auditor General's letter sent to all councils last year, where he has indicated the reasons for having to increase fees in the future. In the last year, in 2020, because of COVID and because of the potential impact on rates and so on, the Auditor General decided to hold fees to, I think, if I recall correctly, 1.5%. But historically, the cost write-offs on audits across the sector is very high, and it's not sustainable. There's no way the office can carry on with the situation that it has been experiencing in terms of write-offs. And it has got other impacts on us as well. The ability to pay staff at rates that matches others in the wider profession and also in industry, just to retain people and to entice people to work for us, is getting a bit more difficult now. So fee increases that we have set out in the proposed letter that are sent to Kevin and to David, they are the fees that have been decided and moderated centrally by the OAG, and really it's a case of just me presenting those fees to you and getting your feedback.
Shane?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. I think you've really just answered my question, but the question was just really, can you confidently stand by the increase in fees when obviously efficiency is decreasing? I think you've really summed it up by saying that there's a leveling out and a bit of catching up to do. So would you stand by that?
Shane, we as an office have never ever invoiced clients for inefficiencies on our part. Never, ever. So inefficiencies can happen when, say, for example, there's a change in a team member. Say, for example, when I took on the council's audit, there was a handover time. Just coming to grips with the current situation affecting the council, that kind of time costs, they are recorded because time costs got to go to a home, but they're never ever entered into the discussion that we have with council on fee recoveries. So you can be assured that we do not bill clients for inefficiencies on our part.
Thank you. And I guess the second sort of supplementary is that where does that extra cost get allocated to? And is there, we've talked about the constraints on resource for the organisation, and we've got 2 universities in Canterbury, but one in Lincoln. Is the opportunity for perhaps pro bono work?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I get your question.
Understanding that you've got constraints for resourcing or people to pick up the job that you're currently in terms of auditors, is the opportunity for our local universities to be involved, perhaps to assist?
Oh, I see. Okay. I think Kevin sort of mentioned that, maybe not directly, but if I could put it in a different way, the auditing profession, the accounting profession is such that is getting pretty onerous to be a qualified chartered accountant. Somebody said that to be a rocket scientist, you need a 4-year or 3-year science degree. But to be a chartered accountant, you need a first degree plus several years of study and practical experience, and you may not even get there. So the profession is getting harder and harder to get into. And bear in mind that they got to study for their CA qualification while working full-time. And during the peak season, they're working long hours, plus they got to study. So if I may use that word, it's not quite a sexy profession anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Are there any other questions in relation to the fee? Nothing more from me with the fee. You know, it's not a, it's not a significant uplift, but it is still an uplift. And I guess going back to Shane's point, yeah, it might be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, because you're kind of saying, oh, actually, we're going to take longer. Well, it's going to be delayed. It's going to take longer, and it's going to cost you more. It is what it is, but I guess if we can just keep thinking, Julian, about that efficiency. I know you've always taken a risk-based approach to audit, and you did cover that off, but year on year, are we making improvements? Are we getting faster and more efficient in the way we deliver audit? But yeah, don't feel you need to answer that. Just leave that as a takeaway comment, because I just want to obviously keep moving through the agenda. But yeah, it is what it is. But maybe if you just sort of take that away as a comment. So if there's no other questions in relation to the schedule of the audit or the fees of the audit, I can have a mover and a seconder of those reports. Thanks, Shane. And who else is on? Did I see? Oh, Bob, thank you. Great. So, Julian, are you staying on or for the rest of the hui?
Yes, I will be.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. So that moves us on to business continuity. Is that Tim that's presenting that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, committee members. I'll take this report as read, and I'll just maybe just move through a few of the highlights. This is really just a report in terms of an exercise we held back in March, and I apologise for the delay in getting this report to you, but it was a report exercise held in March of this year. It was a cyber attack, and we just practiced our business continuity plan. There were a number of learnings that came from the exercise. It was, I might add, quite a successful exercise, I thought, and everyone worked very well together. And I guess in these times, these type of exercises are very relevant, and we're getting better at them. So a number of recommendations, and I include a recommendation set of recommendations at the end of the report, but there was a number of things, nothing really major, but just a number of things we need to work on. Channels of communication, more hard copies of material available, a resource kit that should be ready available in these events. A contact list also we need to have for that. That's not based on electronic medium. But I think the most important thing was to keep these exercises on a regular basis, keep training and raise the visibility of the business continuity plan and our response to it. It's something that we will get better with practice and something we need to do on an annual basis. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, Nicole. Welcome back.
Thanks for that. I will keep my video off if that helps. Hopefully everyone can hear me. It's good to see this, Tim. I'm just reading through the report. So you've got the recommendations and you said the facilitator provided the following recommendations. So was this actually had an independent facilitator running it, or who's the facilitator that you're talking about?
Yeah, sorry, no, we've been working with a company in Wellington, and I'm sorry, the name of the company just escapes me at this time, but they've been working with us right from the beginning of the business continuity framework that was developed a couple of years ago. So yes, it is an external facilitator that comes down and provides us with the framework for the exercise and has an independent view on how we perform. She does this right across the country and is very experienced, and I think it's worthwhile having her on board.
Oh no, it's good. It's good to hear that there's been someone independent, so it's an extra eyes looking over it. So it's good to hear. Just on with your work program, just one thing. I mean, you've got one of the issues you've got is ensure the community centre has a laptop available. And what was that in relation to with this whole exercise that was done? It just seems a bit different from all the other action points that are in there.
We had identified the Rolleston Community Centre as a alternative site for staff to work from. That probably has changed, given that the Rolleston Community Centre's future is probably a wee bit more uncertain.
Yeah.
So there's and this has been raised to me by another manager, Douglas, just this morning actually, and probably we might need to look at West Melton as an alternative site to use, or Tia also, when that comes on board, might be an alternative.
Cool, thank you.
Murray.
Yeah, thanks, Annalisa. And obviously my video is not running either. I'm just trying to save a bit of bandwidth here. Must have used some least and must be up a wee bit. Thanks for the report, Tim. Your hard work continues. Just a question around, and I raised this I think last time. Have we contacted? We've got a number of external relationships here. Have we actually contacted those external partners, we'll say, in delivery when we have a crisis? Particularly, I'm looking there. We've got a good relationship, obviously, with SciCon, and SciCon seem to be quite pivotal in a number of areas, particularly around the delivery of their services. So, are we happy that we have contacted those people, so they're aware that we will be calling upon them, but also that they fit their plan and their operation fits with our operation? I think that's going to be quite crucial, because we need to have alignment with what their views are and what our views are about how these things are going to work. It also raises the question, I guess, and this is a conversation for another time and with full council, but does that continued reliance on SciCon, does that make them a strategic company to us, which is a conversation we should be having again, I think. I'll throw that back to Sam and David for future discussion. And assuming also, just as a final piece, that obviously we've had 2 level 4 lockdowns now, and we'll be able to review how it worked in this one once we get back to a level that's appropriate for us to do so. I'm just assuming, it's a good test of our systems, isn't it? So yeah, that's my comments. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, that's a good point, Murray, and the answer is probably no in terms of alignment with SciCon's business continuity approach. So that's something I will add into the recommendation table to get in contact with them and just align our 2 responses. And in a future scenario, it may be that we actually bring them into the framework as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, the other thing, Tim, is also that we've got the likes of Christchurch City Council. If we're talking about use of perhaps sewage pumping the other way and various things like that. So there are a number of partners named there in our external contacts. I think it just it would be just good practice for us to align ourselves and make sure that we're all on the same page. It's not a surprise when we suddenly go, well, no, that's not happening. So,
good point, Murray. I'll follow through with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Great. Thanks, Tim and Murray. I don't think there are any other questions. So just a couple of things from me. So yeah, congratulations, Tim, on a large piece of work that's obviously taken a considerable amount of mahi and time. I guess I was wondering what's next. So, you know, to keep this document alive and living. So, you know, we've had a mock scenario, but, you know, will there be future mock scenarios, maybe one a year, for instance? And that then got me thinking about, I think I discussed this quite a while back, but around that, do we understand, going to my favourite place of major projects, but do we understand if there is an incident on site, whose crisis management kicks in? And just those overlapping duties of understanding what our role is and what our, as principal, and what our contractor's role is. So maybe just something to think about for the next mock scenario that we do, that, you know, if we were to take, touch wood, but a fatality on site of one of our projects, then, you know, what does our framework look like then? And obviously, you know, head contractor will take control of the site, but do we understand their role and our role, etc. I've been doing quite a bit of BCP work at the moment with my other hat on, as you can imagine, and quite a lot of the conversation has been around COVID, but it's been around what happens when a whole team is out. So if you lose a whole team, you know, for a month or a couple of months, you know, what's the impact on the business, and do we understand the critical parts of the business? So I think I might have mentioned previously in another role where we had completely underestimated the death of a leader. So, you know, the entire team of 100 people pretty much couldn't work for a month because they were all grieving. So, you know, although we thought the impact was kind of, I guess, this big, you know, it was actually much greater, because so it was understanding what the impact on the business is. So, yeah, very topical at the moment with COVID. Everyone's kind of looking internally at their frameworks and making sure that, you know, they can respond in the right way. But yeah, great work. So nothing really to answer there, but just think about how we keep that document live. So that was all from me. There's no other questions. Can I have a mover and a seconder of that report? Deborah, thank you. And Sam, thanks. Now, before we jump into major projects, when we lost Nicole, she did actually have another question that she would like answered. So if we can, I think it jumps all the way back to the manager's report, but I'll let her jump in with that. Over to you, Nicole, if you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. So it's back to page 30, the manager's report, and it's about the health and safety report, and with regards to the Rolleston Community Centre incident. And I'm just a bit conscious of the fact that we're now having to lock the disabled toilet, so anyone who wants to use that has to go and ask for the key, which is not an ideal situation. So I was just wanting to know the time frame on that further investigation, follow up on that whole situation, and where that was, the time frame on that, so that we can give a more suitable solution, but hopefully in a short time frame.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, that's a discussion we're currently having, Nicole, with the staff member that is involved in that, and that will be concluded in the next week or so.
I know, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Cheers.
That's it from me. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, David and Nicole. So moving on to major projects.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Cool. If we turn to page 136, the Selwyn Aquatic Centre is my first report. We're currently undergoing the refurbishment of the 25-metre pool. That's there, and but they've discovered, as they have been doing a lot of maintenance work, there's some pipework issues. There's leaking pipes under the pool, the existing pool. There's been an extension of time has been issued, and the completion of this project now is before lockdown is estimated to be December 2021. COVID level lockdown, the work on site has ceased. Well, exactly, it started again today. There will be another minor delay after the end of December as well. The entire project at this point is looking to be about $650,000 over budget, but until they've actually finished all the maintenance work, we will not know the full final overrun figure. Basically, the major risks are all in the unexpected maintenance side of things. There's actually subcontractors with these continuing lockdowns, getting people able to work when we open again, and in particular being able to have social distancing at the same time. Sometimes that gets very difficult when you're actually working on site. If we go to, I'll take questions at the end. Is that all right, Madam Jenny?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. On page 137, a request of Kelvin, come up with a program summary for the total Rolleston Town Centre. At the moment, it's forecast to be around about the $52 million mark for that, and that's all the projects which will be inclusive in the Rolleston Town Centre. I am still going through each of these items, making sure there is no double ups, because it's very easy when you're actually looking at individual jobs. They can actually be included in two places when you're looking at actual tenders. But at the moment, we're looking at a shade over 50 million. I'm working with Douglas at the moment and Kelvin, and for next meeting, we should be able to give a full funding model that will show you how all the funding will be put together for the Rolleston Town Centre. If we turn to page 138, TRRTIA, there is some major items in the fees side of things which have actually exceeded budget. And this has not been a pleasant surprise. We do find that we can only deal with the information that we've been given. And when you looked at the information from QSs, etc., back in March, they estimated the total fees would only be $690,000 in expenditure. And then when I came back and I found that it's going to be 1.5. The question got asked why, and the answer was it's because all the variations come at the end of the contract, not during the contract, which is not acceptable, but it's what we're dealing with at the present time. So I'm still looking at a total construction and fit out overrun of about $1 million, and most of that is all of its fees. So yeah, we'll just have to work on that as best we can. The construction of TRRTIA is in its finalisation, and we are now entering into the fit-out stage, which is going to cause problems for us because of the lockdown, and trying to get all the tradesmen in there inside to social distance is going to be very, very difficult. So that's a major risk that we've got that will be further extended. At this stage, I've just said that our current estimate time of finish is to be advised, because I don't really have a feel for it. I'm sorry, but that's I don't have much option on that. So it's a pity that the first two projects that I've put up there, they're all in the red, which is not a good thing, but we're working on it. Health Hub, apart from time, it's doing very well overall. I believe will come in under budget, and it's it will be, it was completed, the construction was completed mid-April. It's all being fitted out at the present time, and we've got 67% of the space already leased, with other options now being available to us, and Douglas can discuss that later on. What I've just added an extra slide here. There's actually about $67 million worth of major projects which are going to happen next year, and my report will become quite large because I will deal with all of these reports, all these projects as they come along. Questions?
Any question? Oh, there we go, Shane.
I'll ask a question. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks for your report, and I can understand I guess a lot of the pressure that you're under pertaining to the Te Ara Aotea project, and specifically understanding the 1.5 figure that you've put out there. That's almost 2.5 times the amount that was QS. First question is, who is the QS? And you don't have to answer that, but if they can't get something like that within a reasonable amount, and I don't know what that reasonable amount is, but I'm sure it's not 2.5 over what was originally forecast. I mean, it's I'm glad that we've got a dividend coming to us that's going against the general rate, because we know where it's going to go if we're suffering increase in costs like this. The variations, increase in fees, facade issues, prolongation costs, and methodology for allocation of car parks comes to a total of 937,000. These weren't forecast, but is there any opportunity for these costs to be shared?
Douglas and I are looking at all avenues at the moment, Shane. But all we'll be doing is shifting the deck chairs at the present time, so we've got to make sure that they're true savings.
Okay, thank you. It's probably, yep, that's all for now. Thanks.
Deborah.
Thanks for the report, and thanks, Shane, for your question about the overruns on Te Ara Aotea. I guess when I look at the facade and the contingency sitting with just the facade, if we just like to take that out, I'd also like to understand going forward, what is going to be the operational costs of some of these facilities that we've actually built further on down the track with regards to ongoing maintenance, because while we're looking at the capital projects and we're looking at the cost build, with regards to the designs, I'm just conscious of the ongoing maintenance with regards to cleaning, managing with regards to these facilities. And I just wonder, will there be an opportunity to actually balance out those operational costs alongside the capital costs?
At this stage, Deborah, I'm working on the operational costs because I've also been concerned about what it's going to actually cost us for these things. So that'll be become as a report to Audit and Risk. At this stage, I'm working with a number of people to try and sort this all out.
Bob. I think you're on mute. Turn your microphone on, Bob. Yep,
Am I right now?
Yep, you're right now.
Okay, yeah, it's just a general question, but I've got concern about variations. And as the variations come to hand, are they pre-quoted, and so that we know what all our variations are before the work's done, or are they a charge up which is sorted out afterwards on labour and materials? Because it's not only on this, on just council policy.
On average, Bob, the variations are raised initially to show that there is a problem, but they may not be costed at the same time. They are raised initially, and there are, I've raised questions with contractors as to why the majority of the variations are unpriced, and it's just the way things are. So we continue to push and push and push to make sure that we can keep up to date with what it is. And the QS is on site under no illusions that I'm not happy with having a jump of nearly $1 million over 3 months. That's just not on. So they're working quite hard for us at the present time.
Nicole.
Thanks for the report, Craig. Yeah, it's a bit of a shock with SAC and TRRT are all in red, but thanks for your explanation on those. Just the health hub, I see that's red for time. I just wonder why that is, because I mean, obviously that building's finished. Is it because of the tenanting situation?
Yeah, I count the place is not finished until it's fully tenanted.
Okay,
and
yep.
That's generally why I've got the red in there.
Thank you. That's me.
Okay, no other questions.
Douglas
so
is
yeah,
there.
oh, sorry. Douglas, you had a comment?
Just to hopefully add a wee bit to Craig's comment about the QS. I mean, a lot of these jobs do have a consistent thing, rightly or wrongly, that the costs start to get more crystallised or identified as the project sort of comes near to an end. Just in relation to Councillor Mugford's comment, I mean, this contract is under 3910, so there's agreed arrangements how variations get identified, whether the work is proceeded, and then obviously the costing up process, which at times can be not as soon as you might like. It is not helpful, obviously, where we're sitting at. But I do want to focus on one particular issue, which is the facade. The facade has always been an issue that one could argue might be seen as controversial. Council had a really good hard think about this facade when it was decided to install it. It added something special to the building, and I think it certainly does that. What has been problematic for us, though, is to make sure that the facade is being, it is a product that is safe and appropriate to have on the building. And probably our costs with facade engineering and a few issues we've had have been well in excess of what one would have expected. We have looked at these costs, though, from a number of angles. One is from our internal work, one is from QS, and also we looked at where our legal position sits, and we've explored a number of options in that regard. But key point is about cleaning. So some of the points we've done as the building, as it's gone through, is we have an ability to remove the facade or basically swing it back to get in and do the cleaning. The cost of running these buildings has been built into the LTP for 2021 to 2031. So we do have those costs in there. How they work out in terms of actuals or budgets, we'll obviously be carefully monitoring for a 12-month period, and we may take some changes to work programs and maintenance and cleaning to stay within our budget allowances. But we have allowed for all those particular items in the program. I think that's covered the main points. I just want to highlight a point Craig's made about level 3. That will have some issues for us, as he's correctly identified, and we did identify at council last meeting that we will be having soft openings to the public into those buildings before Christmas, but formal openings will probably be later in January. But we do have products called up in Auckland and Wellington, and some in Australia potentially too. And I did drop an email around to council yesterday regarding SAC, and as you know, there's a couple of pieces of work underway under level 3. One is this pipe rerouting work, and secondly, it is to do with the main pole and some issues here that the supplier are resolving for us. So hopefully that adds a bit more clarity. as Craig said, we will be working through with you on funding. I just want to highlight in those costs that are in that table, we have allowed, there are contingencies within stages 2, 3, and we've also included the arbor structure in those as a contingent item for discussion with yourselves. The arbor structure itself in the town square has an estimated cost of around about 1.6 million on it, and our contingencies on all those stages of work yet to complete still a total of another similar figure of about 1.7 million as well. So although overall the town centre looks like it's over budget, when we get to the work that should be a lot more predictable, such as car parks, town square, landscaping and arbour structure, we do have ability to pull costs back and more into line with the overall town centre project. The funding for these projects is quite complex because there are multiple funding streams, and that's the work Craig and I need to present to Kelvin before we can actually sort of put it in front of council so they can understand what their options are. But there definitely are options. I just want to assure you of that. It is just difficult with our 2 biggest buildings, that some of those costs are sitting where they are. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Douglas. So I think Sam, question?
Yeah, I guess the uncertainty around that COVID creates as we get to the end of the builds is understandable. But any other uncertainty, for me, it would have been, I guess I had expected that the contracts actually capture where the true costs are going to be, what the contingency levels end up being set at, and what our final amounts payable for these builds is going to sit. So it just leaves me feeling like we're quite exposed to an open-ended process that might drag on and cause us extra headaches later. And so just want to know how that can be protected. But then also thinking about, if we compare this to the indoor courts facility and Selwyn Sports Centre, which is a completely different build, but it's still $20 million and had its own nuance and whatever, we were able to get to a space where it seemed pretty obvious who was paying for what pieces and what our liability or the contractor's liability were in that. And just need to think about the two, and I know there were 2 different processes, so just thinking about how we learn from one and also implement some of those things in the future as we go forward, because I don't like feeling exposed. Thanks.
David, did you want to comment to that, or
just sort of to wrap the discussion, Madam Chair? The purpose of the report was to highlight areas that we are focusing on. The second part, which has been alluded to, is coming back next month, is actually the funding side of the response to the information that's been put forward today. So note the comments and the observations that have been made by members, but as I say, that's the second part of the debate, which is next month's report.
Murray, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I've sort of withdrawn it, but I will just seek a wee bit of clarity, Douglas, if I can. The overruns at SAC, a lot of those are the unplanned maintenance figure that is quoted there, and I note that there's an insurance claim in. So some of those may well be recoverable. It's just really some commentary around that.
Yeah, with Selwyn Aquatic Centre, it's really important to sort of break it probably into the number of components. And the first bit is the issue of fastenings and the bracing, and we do have a process underway for that. The second issue relates to issues, and these have been reported, but good to highlight. We found issues in the wet spaces around the change rooms where we've had to deal with issues regarding drainage, which we could not ignore. And the final problem has been of major concern is this issue inside under the hydrotherapy pool, where the drainage pipes, when we were doing the re-pipe work to lift the floor level in the previous main pool, when we put them under pressure test, we found that there was definitely, we couldn't get the pressure we needed to give us the compliance check. If you can understand, with water pipes sitting under a building, you just can't avoid the problem that you've got an issue. It then became the dilemma about how we resolve it, and that is the piece of work we're doing now, which we have the insurance claim lodged. We have to work through that process as to whether we're going to be successful. So the bit, I suppose, Councillor Lemon's making the point is the costs are all listed as a bit of a warts and all. The funding streams, as the CEO referred to before, can bring you a slightly different solution, which might be actually the outcome is actually fine financially because other parties have got some responsibility here.
Thanks, Douglas. That was the point I was making. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I will just give you my view on the report and then we can move on. It's pretty grim reading, to be honest. As you know, I do have quite a strong project management background and there's a lot of red and it's over 2 projects and it's a lot of money. So I would like to see and to have this actioned is once these projects do reach practical completion is that we do need to have a post-investment review on these 2 projects. So for the next meeting, I'd like to know which projects you're going to select, but my suggestion would be these 2 and when that review will be done and who will do it. My recommendation would be that at least one of them should be done independently. So maybe this is the first piece of independent assurance we do, because we need to make sure that an independent review gives us any lessons learnt for future projects. So I'm not going to dive into any of the detail around those projects. Great that we can get back on site today. Obviously, we've got some extension of time, claims, and a whole lot of detail in there. But yeah, as I've said before, I do want to see those PIR reviews done. Even if everything was going swimmingly well, we should still be doing it as good practice. So for the next meeting, if we could please have a schedule of what we're going to do and who's going to do it. My second point is around business cases. So we've mentioned that we've got additional projects of 40 mil and then plus a 27 mil. So I'm keen to understand where business cases are written and when they come across the Audit and Risk Committee's table, I guess, for viewing rather than sort of this big bucket of other projects. So do we see a business case for these projects? So that was my question.
Short answer to that is that we've issued an internal instruction that a business case is a prerequisite for all future projects, and that will come through the normal channels, which will start off here, Madam Chair, and then go through Council for final adoption.
Great. Rightio, so I think we could have a mover and seconder for the major projects. Sam and Deborah, thank you. And apologies, I have completely forgotten to actually ask if we're all in agreement. So maybe if we could all raise our hands for agreement of this report, that would be great. Thank you.
And Lisa, just on that, it might pay just to cover the decisions made earlier in the meeting with a vote. Keep the movers and seconders as they were, but just ask whether or not we all support in favour of those recommendations before we move into PX.
Yep, definitely. So back as far as the manager's report,
just
that's as early as we need to go.
For all decisions made today, following the recommendations.
So we can accumulate it to, okay. Yeah. So are we all in agreement for all decisions made up until this point? Raise your hands. In agreement. Thank you. Apologies for missing that. Well, yeah, then we can move into public excluded section of our meeting. We'll close this meeting and move into the public excluded part. If I can have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Sam and Bob, thank you. All in favour, raise your hands. Thank you. Now, do we wait for the little live button to become unlive?
Can I suggest, Madam Chair, we take a 5-minute leg stretch just to allow